All right, we are live. Matthew Carmen is with me today. This is my LinkedIn Live show, and today we're going to talk e-commerce. We have Matthew, and we'll go to introductions a little bit later. You worked for some large corporations, some bigger companies, have a lot of experience in industry, but we're gonna kick this right off the bat with an article that you clued me into. Is basically, I think your summary before the show was e-commerce has shifted forward by 5 years, right? Yeah. Things are just coming to a crash, and you were just kind of talking a little bit about the disruption when Christmas comes this year, the holiday seasons. Things are just going to be a madhouse, and you're seeing that in your friends that are in the e-commerce market. So let's kick it off with that. But just one quick thing for the audience members: if put in the chat where you're from. I'm in Holland, Michigan. Matthew, you're in Seattle area.
Seattle. Yep.
And so let us know where you're from, and if you have any questions, just put them in the chats, and then I can show them on the screen, and then Matthew and I can bring them up and discuss them. So I'm new to e-commerce. Matthew has been doing it a long time. So, this is an educational interview for me too. I'm learning a lot from Matthew today. So Matthew, I'm going to kick you off, and then I'm going to do some things where I post the link to this to some of my social media channels. So.
Awesome. No, thank you, Charles, for bringing me on to come talk about e-commerce. It is a weird world right now, especially around e-commerce. We have a tsunami coming this holiday for e-commerce. COVID-19, as this article is stating, right, has pulled it forward by about 5 years in terms of, everybody now is shopping online. I've had some crazy stories I've heard of people just now starting to use Amazon, and I'm like, what? You're just now starting to use Amazon? But it's amazing to see that the perfect storm of COVID has totally changed the channel strategy for pretty much every company in the world, especially around how they try and do commerce online. E-commerce has been an industry I've been in for many, many years. I love it. I love that you're solving a business problem through a desktop, through a mobile phone. And it's always just going to be continuing, and COVID has accelerated that. And I think there's a number of companies that, first I'll put, nobody's been prepared for it. Nobody. And there's nothing I can say for this holiday season that is going to solve any problem. It's going to be a tsunami, and you got to point your boat into the wave, and hopefully you survive it. But e-commerce is now a super important part of everybody's retail strategy, and there's a lot of ways to do e-commerce. There's no lack of ability to do it. The big challenge is, how can you do it profitably? And at the end of the day, some companies like Amazon, they figured it out by using scale, but also investment to it. And then, small, medium-sized businesses, there is tremendous opportunity for you guys, especially if you're just getting started into it. But more likely, you've had some strategy in e-commerce, and now you really need to figure out, how do I survive this tsunami, your short-term strategy, and then how do I look beyond it to your long-term strategy.
Cool. Thanks for that introduction. And then, so, we talked a little bit about this shift. It's people are moving into Amazon. I've looked at a few things like Woocommerce and Shopify just to learn about, how you can add, selling a product to your website. Those are some interesting things. Just real quickly, what are some databases and some systems that you connect with, to manage inventory, to manage data? Because, I know of some of the starter ones like Shopify and e-commerce, but you're dealing with some of the larger ones, I believe, right? So some of the more enterprise level.
Actually, Shopify is getting right up there. I mean, in terms of its capabilities for companies to sell online, it's got robust capabilities. So Shopify, yes, is one I've connected with, have experience in. But there's Magento, which is owned recently, I won't say recently, but was acquired by Adobe. There's also Woocommerce, another great system that's been out there for many years. And then you got your big custom and your third parties, right? Amazon, for example, you can be a first party seller through Amazon. You can also do fulfillment by Amazon. So they got a lot of information they also share back to the retailer. And then there's Digital River. It's kind of like a hosted company. So a lot of big companies will sometimes use OS Commerce is another one. Sometimes they'll use and kind of lease a third-party platform. Sometimes they end up building their own one, and I kind of have an experience of seeing that happen when I was at Microsoft, in fact. But the challenge is these big platforms are just one component of it, right? Being able to sell information will tell you how many orders did you get, what did they order, is there a discount, stuff like that. And that's one database. And then there's also other databases sitting next to it, like your CRM, your customer relationship management database has, prospects and people you want to sell stuff to. And then you also have like inventory databases like SAP and Oracle. And so behind the scenes, you kind of have all these systems working, and how a customer would come in, I'm coming in, I'm in their CRM. Okay, maybe then, today I finally like this offer, and now I purchase the product through your Shopify store, and then that Shopify information then goes into your SAP fulfillment, and then they fulfill it. And so everywhere I've been, that's kind of been pretty standard, right? You have these separate data stores, applications. And it was actually when I was at Microsoft, I worked in the Microsoft online store. I was a global category manager for their PC and accessory business. I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars sold every year in this category directly from Microsoft. And the same challenge existed, right? We have a lot of information, people coming into our website, both Adobe Analytics, how many visitors, where are they coming from, what are they looking at, and then how do they then step into, making a purchase, and then from the purchase going into, I believe it was SAP at the time, might still be, and so you then you have all this information, but you're trying to stitch it together, and I tried to manually stitch this together, right? It was very common. You go into this application, let me export this, let me export this, export this. And then I'd try to stitch it together in Excel, and I was really good at it.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of work. Every week it was kind of a manual, and I stumbled upon Power BI literally as it launched that summer, and I was just like, this is the tool that I need. I need this to connect into these different databases. So then I can kind of have a wrap up of really say, like, how is stuff here, and then how does it trickling down over here to an objective that I want? And then what is the strategies I need to implement, to change that, modify it, fix it, take advantage of it. So very much what you're displaying here is kind of a working, functioning demonstration of the dream that I have, and it's a challenge, I know, in many other companies that I've been, to have kind of this high-level executive overview of saying, okay, if I want to understand what are my customers, what's my revenue, orders, units, and margin, all up, right? I'm an exec, just give me these high-level ones. And there's always follow-on questions to it, right? It's always, how does this compare to our budget? How does this compare to last year? What about the year before that? And Power BI gives you just really that flexibility to zoom in, zoom out of those questions to quickly get the answers. And I've been in a couple meetings where those questions pop up, and I just go do a couple clicks on this dashboard, and boom, instantly okay, this is it. So this dashboard I created is publicly available. Anybody can come take a look at it. It's simulating the scenarios I've mentioned, where you have all this information in different locations. And a lot of the challenge for medium-sized companies is to tie it together. And they don't necessarily have the resources to go tie it. And so you have people that are doing it manually, or heaven forbid, you have kind of just really a murky look at your business, right? You have a
Right.
very siloed perspective. And so this one is like an overview. If I'm a CEO of the company or a VP of a group, this is my all-up dashboard. I sign in every morning. This data is refreshed every night, and I can kind of poke around. There's no harm in doing any of this investigation.
I think before we started, I think I could click on the years, so I can add 2018 on here, and kind of look at 2018 data, and it would show up separate line here, and I think the cross filtering should work, right? So I just pick February, and it cross filters all the data. So that's the cool thing about Power BI is you can click on one of the bars and it cross filters everything else. So I just want to ask you about this particular report. So you were talking about integrating from different databases. So this particular report, and you and I talked a lot. It's got a lot in here.
Yes.
But it pulls, for example, the ad spending that would come from something like HubSpot or some of your CRM management, right? And then the actual versus budget, that would come up from potentially your back-end data, your operations, like an SAP.
Yes.
And maybe talk about each of these visuals and potentially the databases it may be pulling from.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you called it pretty good. So the top left quadrant, the customers, right, where it's revenue, orders, units, and margins. This would be likely pulling from your ERP system, your SAP or your Oracle, right? What is my sales revenue, right? How much have I actually shipped and booked? E-commerce, there's a lot of orders that can be placed. That doesn't mean it's always booked, right? The difference could be fraud. It could be people canceling their orders, etc. So this would come from your source of truth of your ERP of saying, yes, this item has been booked, shipped, how many units have been sold. These graphics here, that first one on the left underneath it is the year to date, right?
Okay.
There's always the question of, every week or every day that number is going up. And in that line, how that is structured is the dark purple is your current year to date. And the dotted line is your budget. What did you say your budget was for 2020? And now your budget could be revised throughout the year. And I've seen the pain of revising budgets, right? But it's beautiful here because this could be your budget line could be curved every month or every quarter just by an Excel spreadsheet. Right. And so you just revise the spreadsheet. This pulls in that number and then it compares it to the number that's coming from your SAP database. And so if you click on the little tab above it, which is the previous years.
Which one? This one. Here?
To the right.
There you go.
So this one gives you a quick switch back to say, how am I performing this year versus the previous years at any point in time? Beauty of being able to say, in 2018 in May, right there, right, you were at 129,000, I believe that's the exact number. And this currently you're at 192,000. So your momentum, and I love the term momentum, it's in my name, right? is that line, that angle of that line is what you need to watch. Right. And you could say, well, what happened in 2019? Oh my gosh, 309,000. That's way above the previous 2 years. And often you can explain it, right? There's an answer why that was that. But this is kind of depicting and just showing where are you, right? Just like a compass, where am I in the performance of this? The graph to the right of it is pretty much the same information, but now it's broken down by month. So now you can kind of see, okay, what months am I wanting to look at? How am I performing versus the previous years? Am I, doing better or worse than what I was expecting for that time period, perhaps? So it's a good visual that you can say, where am I? What's my momentum? And then what was actually things being sold? Hey, Greg. Thank you.
Greg is listening in. Oh, sorry, I wanted to put that up there because we had a comment from the audience.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I just want to interrupt real quick. So if anybody wants to go follow any of this or see these live dashboards, right? They're working Visual Momentum with a Z .com/demo, right?
Yes.
And then I just wanted to point out too, if you scroll down, so the first one, you've got 5 pages in this in the report, but the first one is kind of the actuals versus budget over year, and you've got some of the ads, impressions, clicks, and costs. I'm going to quickly scroll over the second one, which is kind of the product line and profits and margins for each product, number of orders per, I think you were saying. And then you have I think an inventory chart. So I'm going to, I love this stuff. So, and just a real quick question. So of your friends who are in the e-commerce business, what are the metrics they are seeing that are just shooting off the radar, or what are the ones they are concerned about the most? Is it inventory? Supply chains are kind of messed up right now. So is it lead times getting stuff in, or what are the trends you're seeing?
Yeah, so I've been interviewing a number of my former colleagues that are still in the trenches, so to speak. They're driving e-commerce businesses, and yes, I think in terms of KPIs, it's kind of like pre-COVID and post-COVID, I guess. Pre-COVID, definitely, there was a lot of focus on top-line growth, meaning I'm trying to grow my online business. I'm trying to get more sales, more revenue, more units. And the growth, it was kind of at any cost. I won't say any cost, but it was at a point where I'm not focused on profit. And there's a lot of experimenting too, right? People are changing how they buy things. And so online gives you the flexibility to say, you can come to my website, a direct to consumer type website, and I can sell you products that I fulfill, or I have a third party fulfill for you, but I own the information and the relationship with the brand. And so a lot of these companies were really about how do I get growth to sell? So sales revenue, units sold, market share. A lot of times they were trying to say, how much market share do I own of the whole space? And then also just channel share, right? How much am I selling compared to my other channels in a business, right? That in many companies they've been omni-channel. We sell both brick and mortar, and then we sell online.
Yeah.
And channel share was always an important number. That number was always going up for online every year. In some ways, you can say it's taken away from retail, but at the end of the day, you can also look at that and say we're all one retail store, right?
Yeah.
And that all goes back to the company. So,
right.
I would say pre-COVID, there was a lot of focus on growth. Since COVID, I would say that there's starting to be a turn towards how can we do this profitably, because the channel shift is people can't get it anywhere else. And what I'm sensing from a lot of my colleagues and friends is just like you said, right? The supply chain is really messed up, right? Stuff that's produced anywhere, they've had delays, they've had challenges getting parts and components to build the finished goods.
Yeah.
And then how do you get those goods wherever they're built, China or other? Then the logistics of the transportation, right? If you got to put it on a boat to come across the sea, that's months. You just now have a huge surge in demand of that not everything can get on it. And then obviously the logistics of getting the stuff delivered to people. I think we all saw probably the world's best e-commerce player, Amazon, right? Really kind of fall to their knees with COVID demand. And we're talking, this was it March, April, when they came out and reported. Bezos, said this is a crisis, right? This is the biggest thing that's hit us as a company, and we're going to double down and we're going to keep investing in it because the demand is there. How we want to get things, as consumers in this kind of crisis moment, they are a prime. Not an intended pun, but they are a prime location to get stuff. But I see post-COVID, a lot of companies, short-term strategy is survival, right? How do I survive this rush? And I'm working on an article that I'm going to be posting here too. So it really is to try and address that, right? It's a tsunami. And I think you almost need to treat it as kind of a tsunami, right? What do you do? Well, first, how do you survive it? And one of the big points I want to push to a lot of people, and I have deep empathy for, is this burnout, right? A lot of teams that have been, the channel has shifted overnight. The teams that are online have felt the burden of it, right? They're working from home, right? They've been trying to teach kids. Now they've had summer break, and they're trying to now, deliver on the demand that, retail can't do anymore because COVID, and they've been doing this for months now. All right, since March, April, May, and now we got this next wave coming, which is the bigger wave, right? Because it's in a time crunch. And one of the things I want to emphasize to a lot of business leaders that have e-commerce in their channels is to recognize that there is legitimate concerns of burnout of these people, and you're going to go into a season where obviously the shopping is prominent, but they're also going to be a lot of them working from home and teaching from home. I know that for me personally as well, my one son, right, having more is, I think, even more of a challenge. But burnout is going to be really something that businesses need to understand to survive this next wave. And then I think this post-COVID, right, once we get past this wave, there's going to be a new shift to profitability, right? It's one thing to put up a store online and sell products, but how can you do it without, just burning money? Online is very easy to, I can run ads on Google all day, every day. Well, I got to pay for them. And then I can run, other type of advertising to drive people to my site, which costs a lot of money too. And so getting demand in this holiday season shouldn't be the focus. It's about managing the demand this holiday season, right? And saying, okay, how can we, set the right expectation, knowing that supply chain is messed up and delivery is messed up. Quite frankly, I think, if you wait till Black Friday to buy things, you're running the risk of not having products be, guaranteed by Christmas this year. And my advice to retailers is to, be very upfront and clear about that, right? You don't know, you can't make strong promises anymore because of the strain on the whole system that, as a retailer, you want to avoid saying, yes, it's going to be guaranteed by Christmas, which last year you could do because you could have guarantees, but this year, I think it's all off the table. So definitely, burnout is a big concern. So, if you lose team members, that's not going to help you survive it. In terms of demand, make sure you're clear to your customers. And I think you make it easier on your team too by focusing on better, longer term offers, right? Don't wait till Black Friday. Just say, this is our Black Friday offer, and it's going to start in maybe October, right? And, that's my my thoughts about it. I am not going to be able to sell any product or capability to make you, survive this wave. But the one thing I do think that this starts to help people get a better understanding is like all this data that I have now, I can start to use to have a better understanding of running the business, which is very much what I've set my business aimed at, is helping e-commerce businesses really get a good understanding end to end, right? Don't run ads on products that you don't have inventory on, right? Don't, if you do, well, what's an action you can do? Stop running ads, right? This is simple, but having that understanding when you have a catalog of thousands of products and teams of people, right? I think that's the one big thing is all of these dashboards would then bring that information and can be shared across the enterprise. Where that was the challenge I always had, is like, I know what's happening here, but I don't really know what's over that wall or over this wall, and it's kind
Yeah.
of all loosely worked together across teams. So.
No, that's a great point. I think the one that hits home with me is when the kids return home and or they're learning from home, and
Yes.
maybe learning virtual, and then you got to take care of the kids and everything else that you have to do in terms of work, and the people in the online e-commerce industry are close to burning out. So this is a tsunami that's coming, like you said. So we have a question from Greg. So I'm going to hold on to that point for a second, but returning to knowing what's over the wall. So if you have inventory, you spend the ads, and then what I'm kind of curious on too is I've been binge watching videos on how ad auctions work. How Google kind of that's a fun one, because I think you have it here is impressions versus click, and then there's the so you have your impression, they see the ad, and then they click it and they go to the ad. But what I find interesting now is there's potentially more people moving into buying ads, and so does the conversion rate get diluted because you've got so many ads out there. So I don't know if you've seen any trends on conversion rates kind of fluctuating post in the COVID era, because so many people are putting ads out there, or not, right?
Great question. I think I don't have deep knowledge on the performance of kind of the advertising, but I do know, as you can kind of see on this one right there, there's exactly that: impressions, clicks, and then I even put up there the cost per click, right? These are numbers that a team that are running ads, they contribute that component of the business, right? I've seen a lot of times where, there's another term called ROAS, return on ad spend, which is really kind of a better detailed measure to kind of connect the end to end, meaning I'm spending this ad money, but what is it driving in terms of returns or revenue in particular? And so, yes, there's a mad space in advertising. This is trickling all the way up into advertising. I know some companies are rethinking their advertising strategy because, before it's been about growth, and you need to almost distract people, right, to bring them in. And Google's got a fantastic engine. I think they've even they are seeing the impacts where retailers are kind of like pulling some of the funding back from advertising because they're just already getting the natural traffic to their site. And
interesting.
people are looking for stuff, and they got idle time, and hey, I'm looking for this fabric or clothing or whatever, and they'll find it, assuming the company has done some basics. But yes, advertising is affected by it, but the cost per click, right, that changes drastically by industry, by product category. In previous life, when I was working in a business to business entity on the digital advertising side, we would see $50 as a common cost per click. And $50, you're thinking, wow, just for a click. But it was so targeted, so specific, that we knew somebody was looking for something very specific, that if they found it and they clicked it, that then they are much, much higher up on the possibility of becoming a customer, which even goes all the way up to $300. You can see for credit card companies, because they look at the lifetime value. And so what is the lifetime value of a credit card company, a credit card customer, right, is certainly well above $300. So they factor that in as a cost. So I think advertising this holiday is going to be quite a bit different. I know Facebook has they have a whole new strategy on driving e-commerce on Facebook. Right? If you think about, okay, well, if I run an ad on Facebook, for example, then they have to go to another site and purchase it. And Facebook is now pushing to say, well, you can actually do the e-commerce through Facebook to the first party customer directly. So there's the advertising has changed, and I have a cousin who's actually in the programmatic display of it, where I can't speak to the depths of how that works, but programmatic
Right.
is how, using algorithms and strategies, you can put ads out there at a much lower cost than a manual placement,
Mm.
but much better, higher return to it.
Really? Oh, that's something I'll need to research a
Yeah,
little bit. So
yeah,
sounds interesting. Yeah. So yeah, no, some fascinating insights. I think the one that got me was the larger companies now, with the attention span of people are doing the research, the ads become less important for the companies that already have brand awareness, where
yeah.
it's interesting for a new entrant into the market. You might need to spend more. And then with so many
Mhm.
new entrants, people jumping on Amazon and then people bidding on the ads themselves, certain keywords I'm guessing would be pushed up in these auctions. So man, it gets harder for the newer entrant, whereas the ones that have built their name and stuff, people know to search for them. It's just a weird pattern and
Yeah,
kind of a
it's
change. Yeah.
it's amazing. Starting an e-commerce business is not. There's components of it that are easier than others. But I always advise people, if you're looking to start an e-commerce business, right?
Yeah.
There's components that you can do, but there's also components you should ask the question, should I do?
Mm,
And there's a lot of good resources out there. You can go become knowledgeable in this space, but there's also points where you want to hire an expert. And
yeah.
advertising is one, because you can blow a lot of money really quickly,
Hmm.
and you're learning. It's not
Yeah.
not a bad thing, but you're learning at an easy way to lose it.
Yeah.
And but conversely, right, there's a lot of opportunity with it. So I think a lot of companies, some companies that have been really direct to consumer focused are actually, it's good to bring this stuff in house.
Yeah.
The strengths of advertising, the strengths of marketing, the strengths of lead gen, and stuff like that. Bring it in house, and then they can work together to solve it. And you kind of like a store, right? If you
Yeah.
run in a physical store, you have a manager, and then you have a bunch of team players to help run and operate the store. You got to
Yeah.
think the same way in online. And online, it's a lot more nuanced, because you actually don't see the customer, right?
Yeah.
The
Mm,
the customer can shop 24/7, and you're building a system that can support that.
yeah.
But you still have to think about that whole experience that the customer is going through, right? How many times did they come to the website? Are the behaviors that you see in, let's say, Google Analytics, and how does that translate into buying patterns, right?
Yeah.
A good example I had in a previous life was, like, when I sold PCs, one of the logical things is at Microsoft is to sell Microsoft Office with it.
Yeah.
And that we were able to, like, hey, how can we get a cross sell, right,
Yeah.
or an add-on to it? Well, we came up with ideas, and there's tools out there, and we tested it, and it worked, right? We did
Mm,
statistical A/B testing, and we said, like, yeah, this experience drove more attach of this product to this product.
mm,
And okay, perfect. We could implement that super quickly. In converse, right, in a physical retail, is really hard, right?
hmm.
There's the coordination of it, figuring out how you can implement that same experience across multiple locations. It's just not there. So it was a good example of using the data that we saw as a pattern. How do we turn that pattern and test it, and then get statistical uh, uh, performance out of, okay, yeah,
Right.
this actually performs better than that.
No, and that brings me to another interesting point that you brought up before the show. Was in retail, you couldn't do that. You had to buy inventory, put it in the store, and then just hope people buy it.
Right.
Whereas online, you can put up and potentially buy a little bit later. Or there's talk a little bit about that. Some of the shifts that
Yeah.
people don't realize between the differences between a brick and mortar retail store and an online store. And you talked a little bit about the cost too. There's some costs that people assume that assume aren't there, but they started down that road and they're like, oh wow, this is going to hit my bottom line. So
Yeah, no, good question. In terms of inventory, um, my experience in omni-channel companies where you would have a distribution center, it could either be owned or more likely you're paying somebody to help support that. Inventory is super important, right? You have an ERP system that helps manage it. And a lot of times, or sometimes I've seen this DC supports all physical retail stores and it also supports your digital store. And digital online is wonderful in the sense that you technically can sell a product without having the inventory, sitting in a physical location to fulfill. Certain risks, of course, to that, but I think we've all seen that we'll ship in 1 to 2 weeks, or this is on back order, right?
yeah.
It will ship on some X date. So these are strategies that are very effective online, very commonplace for people to say, yeah, I'm going to put this product on back order, see how much demand I can get, especially while product has already been reordered, but it's in process of being transported. And so there's, digitally you can do that. Retail, it is very difficult, right? You put product in a physical retail store. And again, in my experience, there's risks of out of stock in a physical store. And depending on your strategy as a company, right, there's a term called an out of stock rate, right? That's a KPI we're going to measure, and we're going to measure every store, right? For every SKU, what is the out of stock rate for it? And logistics people work towards that number. In the online space, you kind of have some more flexibility around it to say, yeah, this is out of stock, or this is expected to ship in a set period of time that you state. Those are challenges too, because if you don't get inventory, or you don't meet that expectation you set, you do get angry customers that then you have to address and have conversations with. That that is another part of the strategy. You got to really think this through, of saying, how do I make a customer good, right? Online tends to have higher return rates. It's easier to buy, right? Okay, there it is. Just put in my credit card and place an order. They tend to get higher return rates. So you got to factor those things into your overall cost structure. Products will always be returned, but what do you do with them, right? What's your strategy to do with them? And there's still a cost that comes with it, because Amazon has set the expectation, free shipping, and quite honestly, they're pushing it even farther, right, with 1-day shipping. And that is not cheap. That is still a cost, albeit it's something that you, me, and many consumers now take for granted. I know I wouldn't say I was angry, but it was kind of frustrating to see products that I wanted on Amazon back in March, April, couldn't be delivered, because Amazon says, hey, we're gonna devote most of our focus on getting PPE out. And they turned their engine to supporting that, which then also meant they're turning down the engine to consumers, which I'm okay with. For obvious reasons of the global pandemic, but this is the best oiled machine at delivering on promises. And you as another company, competitor, or partner to Amazon, you have to think about, how do you address that? What is different that they should buy it directly from you as the brand? And it's actually something I think a lot of companies need to really weigh hard on, is saying, it's easier to go get listed on Amazon. Let me just go do it. And that could be part of your strategy. And that could be something you test and learn while you're trying to set up a direct-to-consumer. But quite honestly, I think the more you have a connection, a deeper connection with the consumer, the better you will be long-term. I think LL Bean kind of puts it famously that, they don't treat a customer as a customer until they've bought from them a second time, right? The first time, I'm trying to see and learn about you as a brand and your promise. It's not until the second time do I actually really know that I've delivered on something of value to you, and you come back. And when you as a business can actually have that relationship direct to the consumer,
Yeah.
I think that's going to serve you much better long term, because you can start to, think about like, hey, this customer has bought things 2 years ago. Now I know what you bought 2 years ago. Now I can start to have a conversation on what you bought 2 years ago, and maybe it's time to upgrade,
Yeah.
or some other kind of strategies to support that.
No, that's interesting. It's a long-term trust relationship, and it's less about price. And you have two people that trust each other, one to deliver a product and add value, and the other one knows that that person will deliver on that promise. So, whereas some of these platforms, I think the interesting thing is there's platforms, everybody's joining these platforms, but then you're just on price at that point. Everybody's just competing, and then you pull up a website and there's 10 different people that supply the same thing. It's like, well, that's a hard battleground to compete in, I think.
It is.
Yeah. So let's poor Greg, he posted a question. So he said, with Amazon crushing it, there's an analytic tool called QuickSight that, and Greg is, so he's in our Pro Plus class with Avi Singh. You and I are in that. And Greg's in Madison, Wisconsin, in healthcare epic country. Greg, so just give you a shout out there. But kind of the analytic tools that some of the big boys are using. Amazon is offering. Now, I'm not familiar with QuickSight, so maybe you can do a quick.
I think it's going to be a pretty quick answer. I don't know much, if anything, about QuickSight. I think what I would say is that absolutely there's the data mining tools, BI tools are hot for a good reason, because they can help you answer questions quicker. And for me, Power BI is my preferred tool. I used to love Tableau. It had quite a different subscription pricing model to it, so I could never really get my hands on it. Some of the companies I've been at, I've worked with Tableau dashboards. When I was at T-Mobile, that we had a lot of Tableau dashboards there. We're also starting to create and migrate to Power BI dashboards. I use Power BI because it's just it meets the needs of being able to connect into multiple kinds of data. The desktop version of it's free, which is fantastic to get more people into it. There is a learning curve to it, though, and I think that's something you and I and many of us share, that it looks familiar. It's kind of enticing in the sense like, oh yeah, I can see it. But then, the hole keeps getting deeper and deeper. And Microsoft's strategy behind it of, monthly updates, I see their passion about the tool, which makes it, preferred tool for me to use. I know Tableau can do very much the same things, and I avoid any of the kind of comparisons, and other than, hey, it's a Makita versus a Milwaukee. They're both fantastic brands. They do fantastic tools. And in terms of how I talk to people about this, right? It's a tool for a means. And I guess the analogy I like to use is, our customers, they have a problem, or they have an opportunity, right? However you want to look at it. And let's use the example. I want to hang a picture, in my dining room. Their need is a picture on the wall, secure and square and presenting, wonderful. My conversation as somebody to solve that is not, look at my drill. This drill is awesome, and it's going to make your life amazing. What they want to hear is, I understand your need, and I want to understand very clearly, right? How big is this wall? How big is the picture? Have you thought of other places? Okay, great. I agree, that is a good location. I'm going to put a hole in the wall, and then we're going to put in, a molly and a hook, and this is going to secure. This is going to hold it really well, and then we can put the picture up. That's what they want, right? There's the the lead of, hey, this Microsoft Power BI is so awesome. I get to that too, right?
Yeah.
You get to that conversation, but customers want to be able to first see and understand it. I vividly kind of remember the data I used to always look at. I'd pull it in from SAP, and then I'd go pull in some Adobe Analytics data, and I would put them in columns kind of by date, so I can just see two lines, right? What is the traffic, and what was
Hmm.
the sales? And I just want to see these two things, right? Traffic was increasing. Did sales increase by it? Did it follow the same curve?
Right.
And the moment I connected it into Power BI and I saw them both at the same time, and then I can hit refresh, and then the next day it popped up, that sold it on me, right? It was
Yeah.
like, that is what I wanted, and then it's the convenience to it, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to go manually create it I did it every Sunday night, in fact, right? Because I was preparing for my Monday morning meetings.
Yeah.
That then I told all the GM and others of like, hey, this is what's happening in the business.
Yeah.
And I think the beauty of Power BI gets you away from kind of the data wrangling.
Yeah.
Stop trying to pull data and massage it and put it together in kind of really a 2D tool.
Yeah.
This is a 3D tool that allows you to get to understanding quicker, and quite honestly start to have more conversations about what can we do to the right,
Yeah.
right? If that line is not going the direction you want, what can you do to bend it up or bend it down, right? I can go turn on ads, and that line will go up, but that turn up will also impact this other line. So then you start to really think more strategic about these things, and quite honestly, like if I'm running an e-commerce business, you got to run it for profit.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies have not. And this COVID is going to be a wake-up call.
Yeah.
I know some businesses just need to survive this holiday, right? It's
Yeah.
about not getting crushed by the wave. And once you're over that wave, what is your long-term strategy to be able to say, yeah, let's get the right view of our business end to end. And because there's a lot of tales and to try and work and pull together, and having a dashboard really helps solve that. I know
Yeah.
I wish I had it every place I was before I discovered it. So
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and we've all had those moments. We've all had the DAX wall. I've run into the DAX wall
yeah.
moments, like you said, where you're like, well, how am I going to figure this problem out with Power BI? It's easy to get started, but you will hit that wall.
Mhm.
But once you set it up right, if you learn the data modeling part and set it
Mhm.
up like you said, then magic starts to happen when you really integrate, the disconnected databases from before, bring them into one single source of truth. And my favorite story is along your lines of, there was, I was looking at one chart and there was sales by a product line, and, we were spending on a certain product line. And then I was looking at the data on the profit margins, and those were isolated at the time. And I was like, oh, we're spending a bunch of money on this product line, but we're losing money every time we ship one of these out, right?
Yep.
And I was like, wow, if people had this data,
Yeah.
months ago, years ago, we would work on the bringing the cost of materials, cost of goods down, adjusting the sales price, or not spending the money on the ads, right? But since that data wasn't in a single spot, we were spending ads on something that was losing money. So I think your point is people are going to have to be more aware of that going into this holiday season.
Yep.
And along the lines of that particular story, I wanted to bring
Mhm.
up, and maybe we've got about 12 minutes left. Maybe we can just do, I wanted to overview some of your other reports, because like Greg said, these are
Yeah.
awesome looking dashboards. And this is
Thank you.
another one that I think is important for people to see. And maybe you can give a quick overview of this one.
Yeah, so the beauty of Power BI and being able to create different reports that are specific to a view, and this one is very specific to what I would kind of put as buyers, category managers, merchandisers, product owners. This is really about, let me deep dive into what is the product sales of products, and you can see kind of on the left there's time. and then below it is the category and product. And I used to own a category like computers. You can go ahead and unselect those and just say, I just want to look at Power Platform. So I unselect Office 365 and Xbox. I am now just looking at this whole category of sales, and I can have different views of it that tells me, okay, great, what is the sales curve of this whole category? Or all the way to like, what is my profit by product category, which would be on the far right. So this really, I would use this as how I'm making decisions for the category, as well as how I'm reporting the overall performance. Like just this is all I would need every Monday morning. I would look at this, understand it, okay, week over week, how are we comparing to the previous month, previous year? Okay, well, this is in line, or yeah, something we tried to do a week ago or 2 weeks ago is actually having an impact, and I see it, right?
Yeah.
And so this really is focused on how many units am I selling, what's the profit margin to them, what's the average units per order or the average revenue per order, and then you can kind of start to, okay, cool, let's try this strategy. So that's really this one as a category dashboard. And this one here is really about the inventory. So this is kind of a snapshot in time. And this one really speaks to having a product in a location. So this is really coming out of, let's say, SAP, and you may have vPlans set up for your online store. And trust me, I've always been frustrated with what is my understanding of inventory in a specific location, right? And this is really the view of saying, what is the actual inventory, both available and what is it saying, on hand, right? Because you could have a lot of inventory, but if it's not dedicated in your own specific vPlan, it's really not your inventory. So here, if you, for example, let's say in that product name, type Excel in that little search box. Yeah, type Excel. And so this is going to now look at all of the DCs for all the product name Excel, and then give you the actual information here. And as simple as this is in terms of like, what is the inventory? It's been immensely difficult in every e-commerce business I've been at, where without talking to somebody either in the buying side or let's say in the inventory side, I wouldn't know this number, and I would be interrupting and disrupting people to understand it. And in this example, you could say, there's this at the very top, this available ratio, right? Yeah. It's just kind of like this in-stock ratio I mentioned before of what's the ratio of available. Yeah. And if you change Excel to Xbox, so this is 67%.
You want in the product name?
Yeah, go ahead and search for Xbox.
Okay.
So that availability rate came down to 53. So, inventory teams could manage to that kind of number. And, if that number comes below a threshold, then maybe you need to step in and take a look at what can we do for it? Is inventory coming in? But this one in particular is huge in terms of what is the accurate information without disturbing people. Yeah. And on the top right, you can see unit sales too, right? So this is now combining that somebody on the inventory side can now also look across and see, okay, well, how are sales of Xbox doing recently, right? Because moving inventory into a vPlan for online or any other channel is often a function of, okay, what is my days of what is it? There's a term, it's escaping me, but it's days of inventory, right? Yep. If this run rate is 10 per day and I have 50, I have 5 days, right? So there's terms and ratios, and every company kind of treats it differently. I'm not trying to push anything here. I'm just putting the data and the information that anybody in the organization can quickly get this understanding.
Yeah. Wow. No, this is phenomenal stuff. So just help me out with this ratio. Somebody could look at this and this is basically how many you have in physically in the plants and maybe coming in, and is it based on, so what's it a ratio of?
So it's the ratio of available quantity versus
Yep.
total stock on hand.
Okay, so is that like some are on a boat arriving, you've
No.
already ordered them? No?
No.
Like, yeah, help me out. Like,
yeah, this one would be reflecting just what's in the distribution center.
yeah,
You could have pictures of what is, expected to arrive. So, I mean, that could be a whole nother kind of perspective to it that could be built custom to it.
yeah,
But this one is really specific to what is physically in the in the distribution center.
yeah,
But not all of it is typically assigned as available. Right? Sometimes it may be in the DC, but it's not been recorded into a plant, a very specific accounting, so to speak, location. So
okay,
I know in my retail experience, I would often have very low available ratios, meaning I had very limited quantity in my online store, and I would
yeah,
sell out. And then I would go talk to my buyer and my inventory team, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we got 5,000 in the DC," and
yeah,
I'm like, "I'm sold out," and
yeah,
they're like, "Yeah, well, we need those units for physical retail stores," and I'm
okay,
like, "But I can sell them. I'm
yeah,
a store too," and they're like, "Well, we need to make sure that our retail stores are healthy too." So it was always a rub.
yeah,
This is the challenge of like saying, "Hey, can I barter with you? Can you give me 50?
yeah,
You don't need 5,000. Can I get 50 more?" Right? Because I'm very quick and easy and fast at selling them.
gotcha.
And sometimes they'd be, "Yeah, no problem. We'll go ahead and authorize it," and all of a sudden it would appear in online available online. So this is not just e-commerce related either. This could
Yeah,
be anybody that wants to share real-time status. And I'll say this has been inspired by a completely different industry in
yeah,
terms of like they make a product and they sell it,
yeah,
and they have a lot of salespeople that want to know, how many units do I have ready to ship today?
mm,
And they didn't have that view. They would go talk to somebody in SAP, and then they would pull up a report, download it in Excel, and
yeah,
then send the report off. And the second they sent it off, it's stale. It's not
mhm,
accurate. Whereas
okay.
this could be refreshed, multiple times per day. So,
So as a use case, does this mean, so this example, Xbox 53%, 53% is unallocated, so you could negotiate with the DC and said,
mhm.
there's 32,000 that's not allocated. You've got 30,000 on hand that are going to this region, this store, but can I have 10,000? And then you
Yes.
tag it as yours, and then this ratio would drop because there's now less on available for other people, right?
It may go up for
Yeah.
you, right? My
Okay.
perspective is if you
Okay. This is
transfer,
this person. Okay.
correct. Yeah. So I mean, if you look at
Gotcha.
that the purple line of U.S. inventory, right, West
Yeah.
Coast, you have total on hand 4,500,
Yeah.
but 2,100 is available to sell,
Yeah.
and so you could that's pretty much 50% right there.
Yeah.
The concern could be is, let's say your available is all of it, right? So
Yeah.
the higher percentage is actually could be good depending on
Mhm.
perspective, or lower could be good. It's just a matter of saying, okay, we're going to set the number. We want our online store to always be at 50% of inventory or higher,
Yeah.
and you manage the exceptions. So if it
Gotcha.
dips, then you drill in, because if you clear out that Xbox, for example,
Yeah.
and you look at if you look at all the product SKUs, that's all the categories right there. So
Mm.
those are the three categories. They're all at 50 or higher, which is
Yeah.
good. But if it dips to 39% or something, right? Then you can actually then step in and start to address it. And I believe this helps when you have such a big product category.
Yeah.
When I sold PCs, we would turn, I think it was probably about 100 different computers.
Yeah.
And it's not too bad. You can become pretty familiar with them, but they're all slightly different models, right? So you're,
Yeah.
okay, this is 16 gig and this is 32 gig memory. And you're like, okay, well, I'm heavy on the 32 and I'm soft on the 16. Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to need to make a pricing differences or something. So this in particular is good on really getting deeper and understanding out your inventory level. I imagine a lot of these numbers are very compressed for companies around, just because the snake is coming through them, right? The supply chain challenges are now starting to ripple, and even holiday right now, companies in a normal sense in pre-COVID, they would be very healthy right now.
Yeah.
September and October, these numbers would be getting bigger and bigger and bigger every day, right? Because holiday. And I think right now we're starting to see some of those machine pieces still turning, but some of them are missing, right? Like, we're not going to have this product. I've seen a number of products I've purchased that have been, delayed, and it's every industry. So it's going to be this in particular area is going to be a big challenge for a lot of teams out there.
Yeah, no, it's just a side story. I bought a pellet grill and I've been posting the pictures and you comment. But I can't order parts for that. I can't, the cover. It may be because people are at home and ordering these, that stock is just on back order. And that's another interesting thing is you go to retail and you see the empty cabinet. You've driven all that way, and psychologically you're like, oh, I wasted all that gas money and time to drive here. Online, they just put back order on back order, expect on this date, and you're like, okay, I'll just come back on that date. So but yeah, super interesting insights, Matthew. So we're at an hour and 1 minute. So can you believe that we've been talking for an hour?
Went by fast.
It did. These shows have been going really fast. Really super appreciate you taking the time and coming to educate me and the audience. We gave a shout out. I mean, these are some incredible visuals, and I wish I had an e-commerce company to apply some of these datas and metrics. Well, with the tsunami coming, that's kind of a double-edged sword, right? But one last question that I usually ask is, we have some people that are interested in Power BI that are in the audience today that, maybe they want to get into Power BI or they want to get into e-commerce and kind of follow in your footsteps. Any advice you want to give to those people that are brand new? I know we have some college students typically that watch. So any advice that you would give to somebody that wants to get into data analytics and potentially e-commerce?
Yeah, no, great question, and I appreciate being asked to come. And it's amazing, the experience. I reflect back on kind of my youth, and I wanted to get into e-commerce way back in 2002, 2003. So it was just after the dot-com bust, right?
Yeah.
And so e-commerce, for me, e-commerce it's solving a problem. And it's solving a problem using technology, creativity, and now today it's about using the data. All right, you're solving the problem of how can I do it profitably. And so e-commerce, I think, if you're not in e-commerce, in terms of if you're a business and you're not into e-commerce, you're gonna be hamstring for a long time. There's a lot of great tools out there. Shopify is great. Magento a little bit bigger. Woocommerce. There's a lot of good resources, and I think there's finding a good person that can help you kind of coach and walk along the way to building, your omni-channel presence. It's a challenge from a small business perspective, but it's worth it. You got to do it. In terms of Power BI, we're in the same class with Avi, and I remember sitting at an office desk. Now I guess it's probably 2 years ago, and I lost time working and playing in Power BI
Yeah.
I discovered it 5 years prior, and I kind of was always dabbling in it, trying to get better. But 2 years ago, I intently said, you know what, this is becoming a passion. I had people and my peers coming to me asking me questions because I would become very knowledgeable in the data, and then I could start
Yeah.
to create views, and Power BI was just the best tool to do it. We
Yeah.
had Tableau dashboards, but they just didn't fit the need. And so
Yeah.
Power BI said, you know what, I can do it. I can start setting it up. And I worked on it for over a year, just really focused to hone, every day I would come in and say, what can I learn about Power BI today?
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking small things to big things. And I discovered Avi and his Power BI, signed up for it, enjoyed it, and I've been in his Pro Plus class. I've been a huge fan of him and his approach. And at the end of the day, getting the skill set, the technical skill set is needed to master the tool.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like back to my analogy of it's a drill, and it's how you use the drill that really matters, right?
Yeah.
And the drill can be overly complex to create a little hole,
Yeah.
but there's the technical side of it, and then there's this whole other side that I've become really fascinated recently through Data Storytelling, a book by Brent Dykes about getting an understanding and an insight, but then how do you use that for action?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, what we are building is everything to the right, everything in the future.
Yeah.
We're looking at the footprints in the past to make decisions on the future. And so definitely get sharp on the technical side of things, right? So you can be
Yeah.
conversant and tell people, but also balance it with how do you share and communicate it.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a whole new angle I'm going to start to take too, because I, why you can get somebody technically to build a Power BI dashboard,
Yeah.
but does it really solve your pain point, or is it actually better if it's solved a slightly different way, but you bring everybody along with it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I can say I've worked with a lot of technical analyst type people, and they just don't get the business side.
Yeah.
And for my clients, what I do is it's part coach of running your business, right? If you're going to run
Yeah.
e-commerce, you want a coach you understand e-commerce, but then you also have a really good, you're bringing a pill to help solve my pain, and partner together. So Power BI, definitely join Avi's class, watch videos, become conversant in it, and it's going to be a skill set for life.
Yeah.
Data's not going anywhere, and if you want to go sharp into the data depths of data science, definitely you got to use one of these BI tools. But I think the balance in the business world is being data literacy and tool specialist to solve a business problem. So.
Yeah. Yeah, the application is huge. You can create all the reports in the world, but just being the translator for that data and saying, "Hey, this is how you take this chart right here and save $10,000." That's
you
worth. Yeah.
Connect it to business value? Exactly.
Yeah. Huge there. And then just along the lines of Power BI and the learning it, there is kind of what Avi says is there's 20%. They do these updates every month, but there's really the kind of this core 20%, the data modeling. And once you get that part of it, all the other stuff is just nice to haves. But once you learn that 20% of the data modeling, then it opens up a whole world. And that's what it took me a while to discover that too. Because like you, I was pulling in these flat files, and I was like, but once I got into the calendar and doing the star schema, and then doing the year over year and doing the time intelligence, then you see, then the light bulb goes off. So along the lines of the technical skill, if you can get that 20%, it will open up a whole new 150, 200% of information and value. So, so Matthew, I want to thank you again. So we're 110 minutes. So thank you for your time. Yeah, you spent a lot of time here. If you could hang on a little bit,
Sure.
I'll just review or do a recap quick, and we'll say bye to Greg and everybody else that's on the call. Thanks for joining us. And next week, I'm going to check with Avi, but I think Avi is coming on the live call next week.
Nice.
And so I invite everybody that's attending, and we're going to be talking about all these new communication tools. And I think we're going to be looking at Teams, Slack, and kind of all the struggles that we've been. There's so many tools out there, right? And and communication is so key. And
Yes.
I know you have some thoughts, so maybe come back next week if you have some time, Matthew. So
love to.
All right. Yep, sounds good.
All
Bye,
right.
everyone.
Thanks,
All right,
guys.
hang on a second for Matthew. All right.